Greetings, friends. About 5 days ago, I started playing online chess, and I got completely addicted to it. I've been playing it every day, and it's way out of hand. I gotta take a break. A few nights ago, I played from like 11 p.m. till 3 in the morning. I just couldn't stop playing it as soon as the game ended because I'm facing the computer online. No, I'm not playing real people, not yet. I just got back into it after many years of not playing it. But anyways, it's like one game after the other. I just click play again, and the computer just reloads in a second, and I'm back at it. And there's like 9 difficulty levels on the settings that they've given, and even at the first level, it was beating me pretty quickly. But I, over a few hours, began to beat the level 1 setting regularly because I started to notice how it plays. And now I'm on the level 2 setting, and I'm starting. At first, I could only win on the level 2 setting maybe 1 out of 20 times, where it would beat me every time. Then after a number of hours, now I started beating it once or twice. Now I can beat it like 1 in 3, 1 in 4 times. So it's getting close to the part where it's going to be like a 50-50, where I win half the time against it. And then, on to level 3, it'll be like exponentially more difficult. So I can only imagine the people that master this, and like, I mean, they're not machines, they're real people that can think in advance and do all these calculations in their head. And so I just wanted to share some thoughts on the game of chess. And I don't know why I started playing it, it just sort of happened. But I know that also it's been in the news, the game of chess, because some people were talking about whether it's racist or not, as ridiculous as that sounds. And that's not why I started playing chess, but that's just a coincidence that it happened to be in the news recently. And those, allegations that it's racist, I mean, I think racism is kind of a silly term anyways, but they were pointing out that because white always starts the game, it goes first, therefore, it's somehow got this. Well, it does have an advantage, but anyways, so that's very simplistic. And anyways, that's not even worth addressing. However, I would point out that chess did not originate in Europe. From what I understand, it came from India or murky origins, but not in Europe. Somewhere in the Middle East or Asia or Mediterranean region. Well, I mean that would include Europe, but not originally the white man's game. Although I guess Europeans popularized it in its current form in the 16th and 17th century in mostly the Italians and Spanish. I don't know. I heard it was originally a merchants who brought it, but then wouldn't it be more like the nobles and the aristocracy that would like to play it because it was about war, and so I'm not sure. Like hearing that merchants would play it, it's like, well, merchants, like that's not really what the game would have you come to mind, but it would make sense that merchants could spread it, and so I don't know, but it's interesting that it came from that part of the world, but obviously it came into its well-known form under Europeans. And what I like about it, even as a kid, because I was in the chess club at my junior school when I was in the 4th grade and 5th grade. And I remember being taught the 4-move checkmate and all that stuff. And I mean, I forgot it all. For years I didn't play, but my family had a small chessboard at home. I remember playing as a kid. And but even back then, I mean, what was cool about it as a kid is you're getting introduced to the idea of like war and participating in a simulation of war. I mean, not exactly a full simulation, but that's kind of the idea. And you're getting introduced to the idea of like a hierarchy, like a king and a queen. The king even has a cross on his crown in most representations. And then there's the pawns, who are a lower hierarchy, like you have to make sacrifice to your lower order men, your lower servants, in the greater cause of protecting your king and capturing the king of the enemy. That is the object of the game. That's what you have to do. And you may do that by eliminating all the opponent's pieces and preserving yours, but that's not necessarily necessary. just put the king in a position where he can't escape and he's in checkmate, so to speak. And of course, the queen is the most potent piece and capable piece on the board. But I guess the queen, like, why would that be? Because I've heard that the queen was originally representing like the chief of staff, or the guy who the king would have put in charge of his army, which would make more sense. So, because in reality, like when you think back to medieval times, queens were powerful. Queens could have a lot of influence, and they did have connections perhaps with military leaders, but it would be more of a rare thing for a queen to be like an active force in a war like that. So, but I think that's where the idea comes from, chief of staff. And of course, there's the idea of, you have to think in advance. You have to anticipate what your opponent is going to do. There's an element of space to the game. There's an element of geography, because you have certain, a certain empty space that you can fill up. You can move things around, but of course things can close in on you very quickly because it's not a lot of space. And I always thought it would be cool if they made it, maybe they did, I don't know, because there's probably all sorts of different variants of the game all around the world, but it'd be cool if there was a bit more space in the game of chess, like maybe 3 or 4 times as much. But then you would have to change the players, like then the pawns would have to be able to have, everything would have to have increased striking distance by a little bit, or not. I don't know. I think that would just make it cool. But the game wouldn't be the same game anymore. That wouldn't be chess. That would be something slightly different. But anyway, so there's the element of, you have to think, how many steps far in advance can you think? How audacious are you? Are you going to strike at the opponent right away? Or are you going to be more cool and calculating? Because often striking right away, certainly striking right away with some of your knights or your bishops or your rooks, you can't even get the rook out that easily, but certainly striking right away full on with your knight or your bishop would be, that would be silly. However, I feel like so far it's served me well to get my pawns out well ahead of me. And then I don't mind sacrificing a few pawns, because it seems the computer is willing to give up its own pawns. I can take out 3 pawns. The computer lets me do that before it kills one. And then I often win games by getting a pawn to the other end where it becomes a queen. And then it's like, if you have 2 queens, it doesn't matter how many good pieces the opponent has. You're probably going to win unless you're really stupid. The whole stalemate thing to me is stupid. I guess I appreciate the idea of a stalemate if you were like raising a king, or raising like a prince or something like that, or if you're in a military family or some diplomatic family, then. But in terms of the game, a stalemate to me, it's like you won the game. I think that's so stupid. It's just an unnecessary annoyance that you have to avoid stalemates. It's like you've captured the king. He can't go anywhere. It doesn't matter. So what if he's not in checkmate? So that's pretty much all I had to say about chess. I think they hate it because it's a symbol of Western civilization. It's patriarchal. It's hierarchical. It has bishops. It has a king with a cross on his head. It has royalty. It has pawns, hierarchy, tradition, war, but the need for calculation, the need to deal with space, think ahead. That's why a lot of the people who hate this, they can't play chess that well, and they're not necessarily that type of mind. They're not that type of psychology. And that's why certain cultures have played it, but it's not exclusively European. We just seem to have popularized it. Anyways, I really gotta maybe start to take a break from playing this chess, because it's really addictive, and I even like playing as black to let I'm not all the time, but if you win as white, then okay, you can play as black. Give the opponent the first try. See how far you can get into it. You wouldn't want to put your pawns on either end out in the beginning. That would be stupid. Like trying to get your 2 rooks out in the very beginning, probably not going to turn out very well for you. Or moving your queen far out on the board very early in the game, that's not going to work out well for you. You want to move out some of your pawns in the beginning or one of your knights right away. And so you start to take over the center of the board, and then you might want to support a little bit of your pawns with other pawns, or move some of those pawns even further, which is what I like to do, and just provoke the enemy. Because a lot of the time the computer doesn't want to take that pawn. He doesn't want to bite on it, and that's kind of smart. He's being smart. But it depends on how much you've supported your whatever you're trying to extend it onto the board. So you have to be centered on this, sort of thinking about the center of the board, because that's where the most stuff can occur, rather than the edges. And you want to be thinking about trying to protect your king. You always want to think like, can a queen come swooping in? Can a bishop come swooping in? Because that can happen very early in the game to threaten your king. Knights can come in there early in the game, but it's more difficult for knights to make a checkmate like that early in the game. Something could kill them if they get too close. But yeah, so basically I put a lot of importance on pawns. Like, pawns are thought of as like the least important pieces, but I actually think they can be a decisive factor in the game, depending on how you use them in the first 5 to 10 moves of the game. Hasta luego, amigos.